and welcome. It's another beautiful day here, unexpectedly really. I wasn't expecting this weather to continue. I'm supposed to be painting the outside of the conservatory, but really and truly it's too hot to do that. So I'm going to go inside and do a few bits in the kitchen. Now I've been very fortunate. I've got a lot of plums from my own plum tree that I harvested earlier, but a friend of mine has a later plum and I've come home with a bag full of plums to use. So I want to use up some of those plums. And I've also been blackberry picking, and if you've looked at the hedgerows, they're full of blackberries. And again, I'm very fortunate. I've been enabled to go into a farmer's field with his livestock to pick the blackberries so that they're not contaminated by any pesticides or herbicides or CO2 from the passing traffic. So I've got quite a few blackberries as well. And so I generally freeze quite a few fruits, so I have it throughout the winter, so when I have porridge I can have fruit with the porridge. With plums, another local farmer told me that he just freezes plums whole. If they're not damaged anyway, he just freezes them whole because he'll have to cook them anyway when they come out the freezer, because you can't just eat them. They're a bit soft and mushy. So then you can remove the stones more easily when you cook them. So I've got plenty in the freezer. I want to do something a bit different. So I've got 3 ideas here, 3 things I'm thinking of doing. The first one, I've lost it already. Its pages are blown over. So I want to try, let's start here. There's a berry scones with coconut cream. Now I'm not going to do the coconut cream, but I'm going to try from Deliciously Ella the berry scones or scones. So it's using buckwheat flour and ground almonds. I have both of those. Almond milk, which I haven't got. I used mine up yesterday, but I've got some regular milk which I use for yogurt normally. Maple syrup and apple puree. Well, I have collected apples from the garden and the windfalls, and I am making up some apple puree as we speak. Then she asked for strawberries. I'm going to use blackberries, and she uses blueberries. I'm just using blackberries. I could try the plums as well actually. And I'm going to do half the quantity. This makes 12 scones, and there's no way I'll get through 12. I'm not expecting to see anybody for the next couple of days, so I'll halve the recipe. So that's number 1. And what do you normally have with scones? Jam and cream. Well, not doing the cream, but I am going to do the jam, and this is one I've done before. And this one is from the Hemsley and Hemsley, The Art of Eating Well book. And there's instant blueberry jam. Everybody's into blueberries, but this time of year, for me, blackberries are my favourite fruit. Let's be honest, they are. And I find round here in hedgerows, the variation in flavour is really significant. There's a wide variety, and even in one hedgerow, it's quite astonishing. So again, this is a 400-gram jar that you make, and it's using chia seeds to set it. So it's basically not so much sugar, and that's what I'm looking for in all these recipes, is not adding in sugar, granulated sugar. I will use perhaps a little honey in this, and little maple syrup in the scones, and I will reduce the amount in the scones because I find the sugars in the Deliciously Ella book rather high, so I will be reducing that. A little bit of honey in here with chia seeds, and it says frozen berries or fresh, so mine are fresh, picked yesterday, so that's another one. And then I have been making quite a few crumbles with the plums that I had from our tree, and I just make it up as I go along. So I tend to use ground almonds. I use a little bit of gluten-free flour because it crisps it up a bit. I then crush some nuts, usually walnuts and hazelnuts, in the pestle and mortar, and I mix. So I first of all blend the almonds and the flour with a little bit of butter, and it doesn't need much at all, very little, to make a crumb as you would a normal crumble. I then add in the nuts and then I might add in a little bit of coconut sugar as well. I don't add any sugar to the fruit, and I just cut the fruits, stone the fruits, put them in a small ramekin dish. I don't add any sugar to them, and I just put the crumble topping on top, and I keep it in a jar in the fridge. So if I make too much, I've got more for another small individual crumble if it's just for me. And that's worked very well. But in this book, this one is I Quit Sugar. This is by Sarah Wilson. I've had this a long time, and there's a lot of good ideas in here on how to give up sugar. And this one again is blueberry, again, quinoa crumble. So I have some cooked quinoa. It's multicoloured quinoa, and this is nuts and seeds, any combination, cooked quinoa, shredded coconut. I think I've got some shredded coconut. Again, it says rice malt syrup. I'll see what I've got. I definitely don't have that. A little bit of butter or coconut oil. Vanilla powder I do not have for certain. And then of course the fruits. So I might try that one as an alternative to my usual crumble. And you know, to be honest with you, half the time I don't have the ingredients that these recipes call for, and usually I can do something, a variation on a theme. So, and particularly I do like, and I did a video on this, I like to health up recipes, and by that I mean reducing the sugar, maybe reducing the saturated fat depending on what the dish is, and just trying to make it slightly healthier than perhaps the original classic recipe. So that's what I'm going to do today. So I thought I'd start out here in the garden, and my geraniums are looking so pretty, and it's not so peaceful today because there's quite a bit of background noise. Still not bad though, is it? I like this. Anyway, should we go to the kitchen and let's get started. Let's start with the chia jam, nice and easy. Right, well the recipe says you can mash the fruit or you could blend them. So I'm going to put them in my little blender, the berries. So this is 90 grams, just over, of the berries. So I'm going to blend them. Wow, 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 that's so black, unbelievable. Okay, and then you can mix it in the jar. I think this is the right size jar, so I'll put the berries in. Okay, I'm wearing a white shirt and no pinny. Wow, look at that. Isn't that absolutely, it's like squid ink. All right. Wow. Amazing. So, and then I need chia seeds, and so I'm going to do half of those. So it says 2.5 tablespoons. So I'm going to do 1, and because I don't have, what would a half be? About 8 mil, so about 4 mil, which is just short of a teaspoon. Okay. So pop those in, mix with chia seeds and 1 tablespoon of warm water. Well, I need half a tablespoon of warm water, which will be not easy to do. I'll do it over the bowl. Excuse my kettle, it's a bit of a state. I'll just do a tad more. and then mix that together. And then a little bit of honey. Now, I wonder whether it needs it. To me, it doesn't need it. I'm not going to add any honey. I'm just going to mix this up. And put the lid on. And that is it. So, oh no, I've not mixed it well, have I? Look at that. I can see the seeds down the edge. And try again. So that's it. That is my blackcurrant chia jam. So that's just going to solidify shortly, and that's going to be ready to just go in the fridge. Because it's not cooked, it won't last long, probably a week, but no longer. But I rarely use jam. That suits me perfectly. And I could do exactly the same by cooking up some plums and do some plum jam. So there's a lot of options here when it comes to this chia jam, and I'm not adding any sugar to this. The blackberries are sweet enough. So now on to the berry scones, and it says to add the buckwheat. Now I've done 200 grams of buckwheat, and then it requires 240 grams, but I've gone for 120 grams of ground almonds, so I've actually halved the recipe. And then we want 300 ml of almond milk. I've gone for 150 of ordinary milk. Pour it all in. The maple syrup, it says 4 tablespoons. I'm going to do half of that. I'm going to do 1 and a little bit. I'm not going to do 2 because I find these recipes generally a little sweet. Well, it's more than I intended, but no, never mind. And then add the apple puree, 3 tablespoons of apple puree. I've got 1.5. So mix that up until smooth. And like normal scones, when you crumble it, this is actually quite a nice, easy method. Now, I've never tried this recipe, so this is a new one on me. Right, it's quite gooey. I'm going to get the knife. And scrape that off. If you've never used buckwheat flour before, I use it for the buckwheat blinis, which I find incredibly useful. It's got quite a, I suppose, I was going to say earthy smell to it. I could smell it whilst making this. Alright. Woo! It's coming together. I'm really tempted to put my hand in and knead it with my hand, but it's quite sticky. And then it says, slice strawberries and add them in tiny pieces, stir them in, and then add the blueberries into the mix. Well, obviously I've got blackberries. Oh, by the way, I said blackcurrants earlier when I made the jam. I meant blackberry. Right, this is quite doughy, so they're not going to pour in. It's just, so that is, how many is that? That was 50 grams of blackberries going into the mixture. The regular mixture asks for 100. Right, let's see if I can mix them in without completely destroying them. This is going to be a little bit awkward, as the mixture is as you can see, quite claggy. Oh, it's such fun. I hope it tastes nice. That's the main thing, isn't it? I find, well, you want everything to look beautiful when you make it for guests, don't you? But there, I'm actually breaking them up, obviously, and making purple scones by the looks of it. Right, now, the original recipe says you make 12, I want to make 6. So, I'm going to try and divide it roughly into 2. And then each of those bits into 3. This isn't easy. I'm not sure how I'm going to do this. I might get another spoon. 2 spoons. Right, let's see if I can do this with 2 spoons and form them. I've got greaseproof paper here, or parchment paper. Actually, I'm supposed to have oiled it and I haven't done, but I'm not going to stop now. Let's see how this goes. It looks a bit like ice cream. I've made alternative ice creams before, and the best one I think was with bananas, bananas and yogurt. A very easy one. I've done it with cashew nuts, which was fine. I've tried it with coconut milk. Wasn't quite as successful. So if anybody's got any good, healthier ice cream recipes, please do share. I did one years ago, which was not at all healthy. It wasn't the classic with eggs, but it was with cream. And there, see those. Let's bring those in a minute. I think I will just add a bit of extra. Yeah, so the classic one I did with cream but no egg. I did a blackberry and apple, and I have to say it was the most delicious ice cream I've ever had. And it was just because I'd actually picked blackberries from the back of the factory at which I worked. Didn't know that behind this factory there was this enormous wall going up about 12 foot, absolutely covered in blackberries, and nobody could get to it except for going out the fire exit out the back. I'm not even sure you could get around the building, if I'm honest, but wasn't much of a fire exit from that perspective. But they were very good. Right, these look yum. Will they be yum? Right, okay. So I can't say it's necessarily evenly distributed, but let's just see how it comes out. Pop that one on there. Okay, so let's see what it says. Grease the baking sheets, which I forgot to grease them. Then scoop the mixture out and form into round scone shapes on the tray. So the oven's been heated to 180°C or fan 160°, and then they should bake for 35 to 40 minutes. So scone shape, I'm just going to try and scrib them down just a tad. I don't know whether they'll spread out, I have no idea. There we go. Right, now I'm going to put this in the oven and we'll catch up again in 35 or 40 minutes. In the meantime, actually I think we might make the crumble for later on. So I'm currently on the crumble. I've just crushed the nuts and seeds, so I've used hazelnuts, a few almonds, they were the tough ones, walnuts, mixed seeds, pecans as well, whatever basically. And in here I have got the quinoa. As you can see, I've got the red and white quinoa ready cooked. This was out of a packet, so I'll have this for lunch with my salads, or for my dinners actually I should say now, because I'm eating my lighter meal later in the day. But anyway, it's quite flexible, this quinoa. So I'm going to add my mixed nuts and seeds to the quinoa. You can of course crush the nuts in a food processor. I just didn't want to make another piece of equipment dirty, because I've got quite a pile of washing up to do behind me. So now I need a pinch of salt. I've got sea salt here. So just a pinch of salt. There we go. And then I've also got some shredded coconut. Now we call this desiccated coconut. You can't see it in here because the bowls are white and everything's very bland, isn't it? I have a white kitchen because the conservatory's on the outside of the kitchen wall, and it makes it a very dark room, particularly as it's a cottage. Anyway, so that's the shredded coconut or desiccated coconut going in. There we go. And then in my pan, let's bring that over, I've melted some coconut oil, and it says to melt it and then add this and the maple syrup to a bowl, and I thought I don't really want to do that. I don't want to make a bowl dirty as well as a pan. So this is not too hot now, but I've melted, it says 3 tablespoons for the full mixture. I've done a quarter here of everything they asked for in this recipe. And then I also need to add a little maple syrup to this dish, and that's I'm just doing just under a tablespoon of maple syrup. And let's get a spatula from here. Right, let's just combine that a moment. Doesn't combine well, to be honest. I don't know whether you'll be able to see this. Yeah, a bit difficult at this angle. Unfortunately, I don't have one of those wonderful cameras that can go above. So now I'm just going to add all the crumble mix in and give it a stir, mix it in thoroughly. Yeah, and that is the crumble ready to go on the plums. So all I've got to do is prepare my plums. Sorry, I'm making too much noise. Move those out of the way. So I have one ramekin dish. This was actually, there was something in here from a Charlie Bigham meal that it was my mother-in-law's, so I use those. And now for the plums. My friend popped them in a bin bag. So I don't know, I suppose I ought to rinse a few off and dry them. So the little knife I'm using, the friend who gave me the plums gave me this knife years ago when I had my very first home. Oh, that's a tough one. That's it. So what I find is I used to cut plums lengthways. So I used to take a plum and cut it down that centre line. That's how I was taught. But now I cut it across the middle. I find if they're ripe, it's very easy. You just twist, one end comes off, and then you've got more of the pip, the stone, that you can get hold of, and then you can cut them into whatever sizes you want. So I found that it's been so much easier when I just changed how I did it. So all I'm going to do is slice a few plums until I'm just below the top edge, leaving enough room to put some crumble on, and that is it. It is so simple, and you can do this with any fruit basically. And I find I don't pre-cook things like berries. I don't actually, if I use my eating apples, I don't pre-cook them either. I just cut them up, put them in a dish, put a crumble mix on top, pop it in the oven, and they cook down really well. If I was using cooking apples, I'm going to have to cut this one, then that would be different. They do need cooking properly, whereas sweet apples, eating apples, I find don't. And this one's stuck. This one's playing up. There we go. Oh, didn't do that very well. That wasn't half. Just check that one. Yeah. Oop, nope. Nope. I didn't do that one well. Here we go. We'll get the stone. I think we'll get a couple more. I know my friend doesn't spray their trees. Very much like me, likes to do things in a more natural way. And I am quite happy, you know, we get quite a few wasps on the Victoria plum, but it goes over very quickly, that one, I find, and I rarely get much fruit off it. But that's fine, because I have a lot of fruit off the other tree, and sharing the spoils with little creatures is all part of the joy of doing this. I'm sorry, I hope you can't hear that. Luna's cleaning herself in a rather unpleasant manner. Don't do that, darling, we're on camera. There. So I'd say that's probably enough fruit, probably pack some more in. And now, just going to pop on the crumble. There will be some left over because I did do slightly more crumble. There we go. So I can put the rest away. And I was going to add a little bit of cinnamon. I think I will just sprinkle a little on top. There we go. It adds a lovely, I should have put it in with the plums actually, but yeah, talking to you guys. So there it is, that's ready to go. And that will take probably about 20-30 minutes in the oven. And then I'll just serve that with yogurt, which will be very nice. So, and it won't be long now before we have the scones out. So I'll catch you up when I'm ready to have a scone with a cup of tea. And after all that food preparation, the scones are cooked and I'm in the garden and I have a scone which I did put a bit of yogurt on the side of the plate. So one of my blackberry scones. It's quite hard. My blackberry jam. I thought it was time for a cup of tea. And let's see how this goes. Don't know whether I can cut this in half. It is quite hard. I would say it's not quite cooked in the centre as well. So maybe I made them too fat. Put a little jam on the side of the plate. And I will just remove my recording device, can't think of the word, microphone, because I don't want to have all the chomping noises again. Right, let's see how this goes. Well, I don't think that's entirely successful, if I'm honest. The jam's nice, that works. The scone itself, I think the buckwheat's too earthy and bland. I can see why so much sugar was put in, or sweetener was put in the original recipe. I think maybe a little salt would bring out the flavours better. Would I do this one again? I don't think so. If I did, I might see if I could do it thinner and make it more into a biscuit, because it hasn't cooked through properly. And that's a shame. They weren't that thick. And they're quite hard, quite crispy. So, yeah, I don't think that's a success. We'll review the crumble later on. I don't want that just now. But the jam is very nice. And I've got it all served on my Royal Staffordshire Blackberry plate. Why not? And I'm going to enjoy this afternoon, the rest of the afternoon. There's not much left actually. And get ready for dinner shortly. So I'll catch up with you again very soon. Well, here it is. This is the crumble out of the oven. I left it in a little long, too busy doing the editing, so probably could have done with 5-10 minutes less. But there you go, that's it. So I'm going to add a little bit of my homemade yogurt. Which looks a bit like cottage cheese, but honestly, I have to say, since I started making this, shop bought doesn't taste any near as good to my mind. So let's give this the taste test. So the dish is still quite hot, but the plums are cooked for sure. Sorry about the crunching, I've got my microphone on still. Yeah, that's fine. I still prefer my own with the ground almonds, with the mixed nuts and a little bit of the gluten-free flour. But no, this is quite nice. It's not too sweet. Plums are good. And actually, I don't often put seeds in mine. They do make it chewier. So if you like that, that's a bonus. If you like it crispier, I wouldn't put the nuts, the seeds in, just the nuts, because they get really crunchy, the nuts do. So there we go. I will have to obviously use up more plums than I've done today. I'm thinking of seeing if I can find a plum sauce for a savoury dish, so it could go with, or like with duck, for instance, or maybe I can find something else, or even possibly put them in a jar. I've seen a few ideas on how to jar fruit, put fruit in jars so they stay fresh. So I hope you've enjoyed a little bit of culinary concoctions. If you like these videos, please share them with people who may benefit, and please like and subscribe if you wish to, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Thank you for joining me today. Bye.